Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to a new video. And today we're doing an updated sort of Cleave team showcase that you guys can use to climb for the season. Now I will say, before I get to it, a lot of these are obviously very dependent on your gear. Like, for example, the TML Cleave, right? If you can't make a really fast damage TML, then it's not going to be good for you, right? Even though the Cleave is super strong right now. So this is just sort of more of a guide to, depending on what kind of speed gear you have, what type of cleave is best for you. And obviously some cleaves are a lot stronger than others. Like, if you see at the top, the first three are probably the strongest cleaves right now for this season. And then like the last three are like pretty weak so far. At least for my opinion. This is like for Amp Flash Legend gear for cleave at the moment. And so we're just going to be talking about all of these. Like, the season has changed a lot compared to the last season. Like, last season, Omni Cleave was super strong, right? Like, so far this season, she's dropped down quite a bit, actually. And, yeah, we'll just get right to it. So, for Briar Cleave, this is probably the strongest cleave in the game right now. Just because it's so flexible, right? And then the Renewed Artifact is just super strong on Briar because it gives her access to bridge while also being an opener, while also death breaking the entire team, which is just like such insane value, right? And there's a ton of Briar Cleavers this season. If you look at the Legend Ladder, there's Frozen Pork, there's Madman, there's like 4 Korean players using Briar Cleave, right? And they're all sort of very similar in terms of what they pick. There's some slight variations, but usually first pick is either Flan, Senya, or Ambitious Tywin. This kind of just depends on your style, right? Flan, you go a fast Flan build to bridge with your Briar S1 in case you're forced to S1 with Briar instead of S3. Let's say they have like A Tywin AOL, right? Then you just want to S1 Briar and push up Flan. Senya is just a nice, anchor to have, right? Ambitious Tywin, this is just to deny them from taking A Tywin because Briar's biggest counter is probably A Tywin because it cleanses Death Break, right? It's a very tanky knight to just deal with, and if the Briar player takes A Tywin, then they can deal stuff with like Ed, right? Pretty easily. So one of these three, and then the second pick is you can go BBK, right? Because BBK will be a bridge off of Briar once you S3 and she can nuke. You can go Frida to give access to free soul burn in case they go something like Bellion. You can go Sid if you need some sort of speed to contest, and if you're a little bit slower. And obviously DDR is also really strong to help control the draft. And he'll also bridge off of a Briar S3. So as you can see, it's super flexible for Briar Cleave, which is why it's so strong. And these 4th and 5th picks are just as flexible. It could get a little bit confusing just to see the amount of overwhelming like number of units that you can pick for first and second pick. So you kind of have to like learn each one and see which one best fits your style. But it's definitely the strongest cleave right now for sure. And so we can see Jacko 5th or 4th, 5th. Luna is also pretty good down here. Politis, Requiem Rana. All these, they're just more bridges for your Briar and more damage dealers. I'm not going to go over what all these units do. Obviously, you should just know at this point. So yeah, these just really depend on what your opponent picks. Now, I should also say this video is aimed more towards Champion and Emperor players. It's not really a beginner's guide to Cleave. I'm already expecting you to know what all these units do and what the interactions are with these units. This video is more focused on helping these Champion Emperor players climb to the next tier to Legend and Emperor. Just helping them flesh out a draft for them to consistently climb with, right? It's not really meant for new players because they're going to see first pick, second pick, third pick. They'll be like, oh, which one do I pick? Or like these 4th and 5th picks, oh, which one do I choose with one of these? Like, it's not really meant for that. You should already know what these units do. So the target audience for this video is a little bit different. So apologies for that, new cleavers. But yeah, anyways. Revan Zeo Harseti, obviously, right? Because since you're on renewed, well, you're not on Gaia. So Zeo's a 4 span, which means also Harseti's a 4 span. Now you're gonna see this trend a lot with all these cleaves. It's always gonna be Zeo Harseti pre-ban for the most part, except just a couple at the end. So yeah. if you want to look at profiles for briar cleavers, I think frozen pork is super strong. And then obviously madmen, right? As I mentioned earlier. Now, in terms of speed, all you have to do is just give your briar like your fastest speed gear. Like you can go, if you have the 10 speed EE, just give her your fastest gear. And for legend, usually maybe like 320 briar is enough for legend. Maybe a little bit lower, like 315-ish. For emperor, I'd say maybe 305 is enough to end emperor with briar cleave. So yeah, you just lower it by 10 usually. So yeah, let's talk about frida cleave next. So this is probably the second best, tied with TML. Probably the same in terms of how good they are. So frida made a huge resurgence in the meta because of her access to free soul burn, right, with their artifact or bird's eye view. I know Haku also plays with Doctor's Bag, so that's an option you can do, but I feel like bird's eye in her own arty just allows for more aggressive play, right? So I prefer bird's eye, but again, it's mostly preference based. So the frida cleavers this season in legend, there's Haku, right? There's also this Korean player named Yoshin Tonga, and then he's playing this frida cleave with Abyssal Yufine and BBK second pick usually. Same with Haku, they always pick Abyssal Yufine and BBK for the most part. Sometimes they flex into New Moon Luna and Knuckle depending on if these are pre-banned or taken. And Lilius here, this one's interesting because there's one frida cleaver, I don't remember the name, but they do a setup where I forgot if it was Lilius in the front, but essentially you're allowed to soul burn your Lilius twice, right? So you can drag dual attacks twice before you S3 with your high crit damage DPS like a flan or something, right? So it's a lot of upfront damage immediately because of frida. And frida herself, she's a bridge herself, right? She pushes up 25% or I think 20 CR, and then it gives a global attack buff to everybody. She can cleanse debuffs on her S1, gives a barrier as well. She can CR push people if she wants to with her S1 too. Like there's a lot of flexibility with frida, so she's super strong this season, right? And then usually you'd probably think of people going Celine to counter it, but then if you go like Bloodblade, Karin, and then Knuckle, it kind of deters Celine picks, right? Same with Luna, right? So it's kind of hard to pick Celine into frida. Obviously the 4th and 5th picks, Death Breakers are super nice for frida cleave. You can go Judge Kisei Ran to help Death Break guarantee, right? So you have 2 DPS with BBK and Judge Kisei, or you can just go Opener Ran Death Break. Sid's also nice if you're racing, right? Like Sid Villager, right? Vivian's nice if you need to anchor up, but also need an AoE damage dealer. Rowana to go with something like an Amiki. Flan's always good. Briar's always good for anti-revive, especially with Royal's buff. Nice for pivoting to control if they go a bunch of counterattacks. Like, again, frida cleave is super flexible, which is why it's so strong. Now you'll see a lot of these cleaves are extremely flexible on their 4-5, which is why they're so good. But like, as you go down the list, they get less and less flexible. So that's where the strength comes in terms of how good a certain cleave team is, right? And obviously the pre-bans again are going to be Zio Harsetti. In terms of speed, I think for Legend, if you're close to 310, you could probably end Legend pretty easily. 300-ish is probably what I'd say for Emperor, just because she's the same base speed as Amit, so getting high speed on her is really hard. But if you're able to do it, then it should be pretty free to end in those tiers. Yep, so let's move on to TML. So this is what I've been playing this season. There's a lot of TML cleavers in Legend as well. There's Everlow, there's Wombo, there's me, there's Mount Fuji, right? There's that one Korean guy, Chobap, I think that's his name, right? There's a ton of TML cleavers this season. There's also ML Ken BBC, right? There's a lot. But the point of TML Cleave is similar to Frida. She acts as a bridge on 3. Like the strongest cleaves, they're able to bridge as well as being an opener. But the difference with TML is that she's a single target nuke DPS for turn 1. So the strengths of her is that if you pick stuff like RB, unless it's super giga tanky, It's an immediate dead pick versus TML. Same with stuff like Bastion, Sage Ball, or Squishy Acades. You can't really pick those into TML because they're just gonna die in one hit to a Silver Nest 3. But the cons of TML is that she's super gear heavy. She might be the hardest cleave to gear, just because you need insane speed and damage gear, which is really hard to come by, right? It's kind of like how you build a Ran, but at least if Ran his base speed is high, so he's a little bit more forgiving. But TML, she's base 119, so you need super high speed and super high damage at the same time. But if you're able to get that gear, like let's say if you can get a 300 TML, that's probably enough to end an Emperor. 310 is probably enough for Legend, right? Closer to 315 will be easier, like Harrison. But like there's just a lot of ways you can play TML, right? You can proc Moon Bunny with S2, S3, right? So Moon Bunny's a dead pick. If they go Sling, you just skip the S2. There's a lot of flexibility with TML as well. So first pick, you can go New Moon Luna or DDR. I think more people like DDR better than Luna. Like, I still like Luna, but I can understand why people like DDR more. So one of these two first picks, right? DDR is just super strong that counters all of TML's picks, and DDR gets enabled by TML's push. We have Sid, who's also really strong because you go Wind Rider Sid, because your TML will give attack buff to Sid, so you'll start nuking stuff really easily. Plan is also super strong with TML, because if you go the damage build, you can start nuking stuff with like your if you go like Luna, right? You can Luna S1, you can skip the S, or you can like bridge one of your 4 and 5. There's a lot of flexibility. You can go like Rowana, TML, Flan, right? And then your Rowana can def break someone with the S1 and then insta kill with Flan. You can go Knockable if you want to play a control game. With this control team, you can go DDR, Knockable, TML, Fumir, right? With the green unit last, like maybe like Gala. That's also a really strong draft if they don't trap much cleanse. And obviously BBK is also really good because BBK is a just a really strong DPS that gets enabled by TML and also gets attack buffs. So also really good. 4th and 5th picks, obviously Gala if they don't go Ilanov, but it's pretty rare that they don't go Gala, so, or that they don't go Ilanov. Don't be picking Gala too much. Rowana if they go Amiki, which is very common. Solitaria if they go like Sylvan Sage or Fire Flan, right? Straze if they go like something like a Moon Bunny plus Celine. That way you can just push and then Straze kills, reveal Celine, and then your other DPS can just deal with it with the Celine after. Right, Lua if they go another Amiki answer, right? Briar for RB, but like I mean TML already extinct, so it's not really picked too much. See Pavel if you have 2 guaranteed crits that you can guarantee the team with, right? Ludwig is also decent if they don't go Bellion. Politis is nice if they go like Acades, and you know it's a tanky one. Right, there's a lot of flexibility with TML as well. So I think TML is super strong this season. She was strong last season too, but even like the new buffs to like Elena, like TML doesn't really care, right? Same with Dilibet. Dilibet seems really strong against Briar Cleave after her buffs, but TML doesn't really care about any of those because she doesn't have any debuffs and she's a single target cleave. So yeah, pretty good. We'll go on to Zeo now. So for Zeo Cleave, still pretty strong this season. There's a couple Zeo Cleavers in Legend. There's one Korean guy that's playing Zeo Harsetti. There's another one that's playing Zeo Ran. But I still do think the best Zeo Cleave, if it's available, is Luna Zeo, right? Luna Zeo, if you're able to get these two in, it's just so strong. Because they're forced to pretty much ban Luna. Like, assuming your pre-man's Rebellion +1, it can either be Ilanov or Harsetti. If it's Bellion +1, Luna automatically becomes the best unit in the game, like by far. Just because the only way to counter Luna is either outspeed or run high ER to stop her from soul burning, right? The Bellion on 3. But then since you no longer can go Bellion on 3, Luna is just guaranteed soul burn every time. And then in a Zeo Cleave draft, it's super easy to counter stuff like Acades and Sage Ball, because you can just slam Requiem Rana and Politis on 4-5 with Luna, and they're forced to ban Luna every time. So even though they draft counters to Luna, they're forced to ban it anyways, because it's too strong. So I love going Luna first pick. if you're playing Zio, into obviously second pick Zio, or you can first pick Zio. Like if Luna's pre-ran, you just first pick Zio and either go into Arceti Ran. Third pick is usually always Ludwig. It's very rare that it's not Ludwig. Sometimes it's Rowana if they go Amiki, but that's like the only exception. And fourth pick, you can go Flan, right? The damage Flan is super strong with Zio, because once Zio laps around for a second turn, you can start doing a lot of damage with S1 Flan dual attack into his DFI S1, which is a lot of damage. Cav is also really strong because it'll be a guaranteed bridge because your Ludwig's on 3, right? So Cav will always be able to proc S2, assuming they don't have ML Poly or Elvira. Rowan is also very good because she's just a broken unit in general for Cleave, right? Counters Amiki. Politis just counters Stage Ball and AOL and Elena and Acades. Frida's really interesting here because if they go something like an Ed, right? If you're playing Zio Harsetti, Frida's a really nice forward because if they go Ed to counter Harsetti and your Ludwig, Frida can push up above after you soul burn your Harsetti and then cleanse the debuff, assuming your Frida has ER, right? Cleanse off all the debuffs from Ludwig and then he can nuke after, right? While also giving attack buff. LHC is really strong because a lot of people go counterattackers into Zio Ran Ludwig and then LHC just gets max value. Obviously Jacko's good too. So yeah, that's Zio Ran or Zio Harsetti or just Zio Cleave in general in a nutshell. I think pre-bans are definitely has to be Valiant if you're playing Zio Cleave. And then these are just dependent on if you're playing Zio Harsetti or if you're not playing Zio Harsetti, right? So yeah. Now we'll go on to Ran Cleave. So obviously RNL got nerfed this season, so most Ran Cleavers are going to be switching away to like Symbol for the most part. There's a couple Ran Cleavers. I think Potato Balls is probably going to be the most famous one, or most notable one that's playing Ran at the moment. But there's a couple more. There's like a couple Korean players also playing Ran. But for Ran Cleave this season, it's pretty cut and dry. Like you can go Flan first pick or Luna first pick, right? Into Frida, because the thing about Ran Cleave on 3 is that you can't pre-ban Bellion anymore because Zio Harsetti are hard counters to Ran. So you have to let Bellion through, which means you always have to take Frida on 2 to be able to soul burn Ran, because if Ran can't death break, then he loses all of his value, right? So Frida also just enables Luna as well. Flan is just a nice damage dealer you can do. 4 and 5, it's just dependent on opponent draft. Like these are all strong, all just strong damage AoE nukers that can bridge off of a Ran, right? Obviously except Politis, but then if they have like AoE, then Politis is a bridge. Right? These are all just Ran bridges essentially. That's pretty much it for Ran Cleave. Like I think he's gonna drop even more after Elena's buff goes through, which it should be out now. But now with Elena's buff, if you run Doctor's Bag Elena, then you cleanse both Stigma and D-Break, which is pretty fucking hard to deal with as a Ran player. So we'll see how Ran is after Elena's buff. Also, Designer's buff makes it really hard to play Ran as well, so it doesn't look good for Ran, I'll be honest. But we'll see. Now we'll go on to Omid Cleave. Omid Cleave also suffered a lot this season, just because of Harsetti and Ilinov. Like last season, there was no Ilinov or Harsetti, so Omid Cleave was super strong. But now with these two being out, like your pre-bans are forced to change to these two. You can't no longer pre-ban Zio Aeufine anymore, which means you can't play on Fan anymore because you have to be on Soul Consolation, right? For the most part, there's a couple Omid Cleavers left this season, right? There's Hours, but I don't know if he's been playing Omid Cleave lately. Slam Dancer still plays Omid from time to time, right? And I think that's it so far this season. There's not a lot of them. So first pick is usually DDR. Sometimes you can go Aeufine as well, but I think DDR is just more common if you're playing Soul Constellation. Second pick Politis to enable or to deny them from taking Politis, right? Because Politis is just super hard to deal with for Ahmed. Especially if they're on like a pistol crown or something like that. Third pick Ahmed is obviously really common. Oh, and then for like the speed thresholds for Ahmed, you honestly don't need too much speed on Ahmed to end an Emperor, right? Like I think Xerxes was running 290 Ahmed and ended in Emp, so there you go for that. And then for Legend, like the important thing about Ahmed Cleave is that you need to have ER. So the speed doesn't matter as much, like 300 to 310 should be enough for Legend as long as you have the ER to resist Zeo S3. So yeah. Fourth and fifth picks, obviously, since Ilinov pre-ban is pretty common, that opens up a lot of drafts to pick like Gala. Kisei is also really strong with Ahmed, right? There's Judge Kisei. I think the most two common follow-ups for this Ahmed draft is gonna be Kisei, Judge Kisei, right? Just two full damage nukers that can wipe an entire team by themselves. Sometimes you can go Gala with Ludwig or Ludwig. ML Cannon to go Candy, and then Says if they go like Ilinov to act as a Def Pen resistance unit. And Says doesn't really care about that, so there's a couple variations you can go, but Ahmed Cleave, it's not that flexible, so it's been struggling quite a bit this season. So I wouldn't recommend playing Ahmed this season. I'd rather, if you're gonna play Ahmed, just play Frida instead for more success. But if you really like Ahmed, then yeah. Now, lastly, we have flidica, right? So flidica, flidica this season is also pretty bad. I think there's only one Legend player right now in that's playing flidica, and that's Mad Lad. So you can look up his profile to see what he's playing, but Anchor Senya is pretty common for flidica Cleave up in Emperor and Legend, right? And then second pick, usually Sid or Veronica, depending on if they go BBK. If they go BBK, it's almost always Veronica. If they go Sid, then, or if they go anything else, then it's usually Sid. Because the problem with flidica is that her base speed is way too slow, so you kind of need an imprint on 2, almost always, because it's super hard to outspeed. Because like, unlike TML and Frida, their base speeds are higher, so it's easier to race people. But flidica is 114. That's 15 under Ran, and if you include the speed set bonus as well, you're automatically down like 18, 19, 20 speed under a Ran, which is super hard to race. So that's what they go imprint on 2 usually. And the only, I'd say like a a silver lining with flidica Cleave is that you don't have to pre-ban Zeo because you're on Guiding Light, right? Which means you can pre-ban Ilinov, which means you get access to a lot of the Death Pen units. So like Gala, Janua, right? Even something like a Huayang is pretty good for flidica Cleave. Politis isn't bad either, right? Nako is good for controlling people. Caesarea, right, if you're on the full bomb EE. See Pavel because you can activate off of S2, S3, and then Vildred racing, right? So in terms of like versatility, there is some versatility, but the problem is just that her base speed is just way too low, so she gets raced way too easily, right? If you want to end Emperor, like probably 300 flidica, right? Close to 300, maybe a little bit lower, like 295. And then for Legend, probably gonna have to start hitting the 310 flitty mark, which is like insane gear. So yeah, it's not easy at all. So I think that's most of the Cleave this season. Para Cleave is just completely dead. I don't really see Para at all. I think Para Cleave is just terrible, so I wouldn't even bother playing Para this season. So yeah, I'd recommend playing, honestly I'd recommend playing one of these 3, right? If you're a champion player that has decent speed gear, try looking at one of these, depending on what kind of speed gear you have. The most accessible will definitely be this Briar Cleave, because you don't need anything besides speed, right? I guess same with Frida, but some ER is nice. And then TML is probably the hardest to gear because you need a lot of damage gear. And these would be also like Zeoran and Ahmed are also options if you just don't like playing any of these three. So yeah, that's pretty much all the Cleave shops that are popular in Emperor and Legend this season. So hopefully this video helped you guys out, and good luck on your climbs for the rest of the Pursuit season. Alright, that'll be it. See ya.